Okay. Hi, Lisa. It's Jana. I'm here with Ben Ivey. He's from the UK. Yay. Except for you'll see him when you go and do some research. You're going to see him all over the place. So I'm going to get us counted in and get going with this. So 3, 2, 1. Hi, and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I am so excited to have Ben Ivey with us. Ben is the CEO and founder of the Entrepreneurial Lifestyle. He is an international speaker and mentor. Ben specializes in helping successful entrepreneurs reduce stress and overwhelm to improve their efficiency in business while living a lifestyle they enjoy. Ben is also the founder of the Entrepreneurial Lifestyle Coach Academy, training lifestyle coaches with the coaching skills, knowledge, and business strategies to build a six-figure coaching business or practice online, which I love that you're doing. I think that it's so sad that there's so many people out in the world saying they're coaches and they haven't been through any training. So let me just say this before I get started with Ben. First, do no harm for all of you that are out there trying to help others. So welcome to the show, Ben.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, one of the things we do on the show is we ask you to please share your story of hope. And I would really love it if you could do that today if you're up to it.
Of course, yeah. Let's go straight in.
It's all yours.
Cool. So the way in which I like to explain this story is a little bit different. So for the listeners, I want you to imagine that you had an opportunity to see one of your heroes. And for me, I had a chance to see one of my heroes. I was so excited. I remember getting into my car, and then I'm not sure if you've been in LA, or I equate this to China, where you have drivers that clearly have no idea what they're doing, right? It doesn't matter if I'm like green light, red light, orange light, that you know they're going straight. It's just insane. Have you ever seen that before? Because that was me. I got into the car, I realized I was driving like a madman in London, attempting to finally get to see my hero. And then as I arrived there, I completely forgot about parking. So I'm searching, I'm looking, I'm attempting to find this parking space. And I remember seeing one on the right, but there was this huge white Land Rover coming towards me. I turned my indicator on. I'm in a tiny little silver Vauxhall Corsa. He also turned his indicator on. We were neck and neck. And I know what you're thinking. Ben obviously could do the right thing and allow him to go in. It wasn't one of those days. I went straight in and I felt the venom from him as he passed by. And if you ever had that in a car, you just receive this venomous look. And as I got out, I went up to this door that kind of looked like Hogwarts, right? It was this huge brown door. And I remember going in with both hands to open this door. And I finally saw my hero. And he was over 6'4". He had a tiny little bit of tuft of hair on his head. And he had a huge smile. And I remember being able to spend 2 hours with that hero. And it was incredibly life-changing for me. And I want you to imagine if you had the opportunity to spend 2 hours with that hero, how that would make you feel. But then the very next day, something strange happened. What I didn't know is that was going to be one of the last times that I would ever see that hero. The very next day, my hero committed suicide, and I had no idea. And if you had been with me a week later, you'd have found me sitting on a bench, and it was a beautiful blue sky outside. The birds were chirping, and the sun was shining. But this was in complete contrast to what was going on inside of me and inside of my mind. Have you ever had a moment in your life where your hands didn't stop shaking? I remember being in this cold room, thinking to myself that I have to say something that are going to make a difference to the people sitting in the church. We now welcome Ben Ivey to the stand. I remember standing up and looking into a sea of faces, all of Mark's family and friends, hoping there was something that I could say that could make them feel better about this situation. We're all so fortunate to have known Mark. Because the truth is, Mark was more than just a hero to me. Mark was like family to me. Mark had known me ever since I was a young child. Mark was actually my dad. And to think it was only a week earlier that I saw him walk out of a toilet with toilet paper wrapped around his head, pretending to be the invisible man. A man with a laugh so loud that it would echo in a room. But this took me on a journey of self-discovery where I quit my business in Silicon Valley and I started to search about what is it that really matters to people in life? Why do we do what we do? And part of this search was understanding what happened, but also why is it that we create these parallel worlds? And how is it that people can go down a downward spiral and be unable to move forward? And on that journey, I've had an opportunity to work with people from all walks of life. Those who have had a billion-dollar business, lost everything. His best friend stole his private jet. He went to jail. And this is a man that I met in LA, and being able to transform his life where he's no longer suicidal, to helping entrepreneurs that are overwhelmed to ultimately move forward. And for me, I now look at that moment as a gift, as it completely changed the trajectory of my life and has allowed me to do things that I would never have thought have been possible.
Well, I love that you've taken what you have from it and you're out there helping others with it now. So that's amazing. One of the things I want to ask you about your story, because our family just went through something very similar. And the thing is, you just saw your dad a day before and he was happy, smiling, greeting you. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. And that's how it was with our family member too. And all of us were like, what did we miss? Like, how do you deal through that? Like, do you feel like you missed something? Like, was he calling out? Was he asking out? But we even have pictures of the day before because it was Mother's Day the day before with her laughing, like she's laughing in the photo with her dog. And you're like, how do we not see that?
Yeah, and I think what's incredibly challenging in those scenarios is that as humans, I think we're very good at creating these parallel worlds of what people see as very different to how we're really feeling inside. And through the work that I've done, I think ultimately there's these two main factors that usually cause people to be suicidal, which are relationships and finances. And generally speaking, that's what take people on this downward spiral. But when I think of what happened with me, the only thing that I remember is my dad giving me 2 hugs. He gave me a hug and then he gave me another hug. And it's very easy in retrospect to think, oh, that could have been a sign. But the truth is that it's something so small that it's almost impossible for us to be aware of it. And I think it's very challenging in those circumstances. And obviously my condolences to what's happened with yourself, is that very often we look to ourselves as, could we have known? Was there something we could have done differently? And I think it's very easy to have the guilt and go down this downward spiral where very often it's near to impossible to really understand how someone is truly feeling.
Well, I think that's going to lead us very well into what I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you're out because of your journey, changing the world. Like he is, I had to ask him where he was actually from, because when I was doing my research, he's speaking everywhere. And so I wasn't sure if he's speaking where he lives or is he traveling to but he's amazing. You're amazing, Ben.
Thank you.
But I want to talk to you about dealing with the overwhelm, because right now, with COVID going on, let's face it, we're all like, even if it's going really well for us, we're still like, when is this ending? I thought it was going to be over already. And how are we going to get back to some sort of normal? So how do you deal with the overwhelm? What advice would you have for people?
Sure. Well, I think ultimately we're in a time right now which is incredibly different to what we're used to, and it's very much a new norm. And I think that when we look into anyone dealing with this scenario, it's how quickly you can adapt to the change going on. I think when we look into overwhelm, one of the biggest challenges that people face at present, and even myself, is that when you're constantly working from home, and you are in that environment, it's very difficult to step away, and it's easy to be overwhelmed, whether you run your own business, whether you're running your own coaching practice like we were chatting about before, or whether or not you're an employee. Very often when you have that space where you're just by yourself working from home, it's actually incredibly challenging to step out of that. One of the things that I think is incredibly important is about putting in business boundaries. So this is where you actually have a cutoff time, and it's really important. Funnily enough, my wife was telling me today, she was saying, Ben, you know what, you're taking a lot of podcasts in the evening recently. I think you should stop. And I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, but for me, I really enjoy this. And often when you have the play and the work, it's a little different. But even myself, I make sure that I spend the weekends off, I relax, I take time off. And that's really important. And one of the things that I noticed for myself is, as you mentioned, I'm usually traveling to a lot of different places. I'm very much grounded this year in the UK, but it's summer, so it's quite nice. Talk to me again when it's winter. But ultimately, it's been fascinating to be in one place where I haven't had a holiday in a long time. It's been about 4 months. I haven't really had a break, and I noticed that a couple of weeks ago. And I was wondering why even I was feeling a bit tired and overwhelmed. And it's very much because I didn't schedule that break and that rest for myself. And especially when we're at home and we're not actually allowed to leave the house, we don't give ourselves that opportunity. And I think scheduling that time to rest and to chill out is of fundamental importance to help people move forward. And I guess one of the last things with overwhelm that I think is a really cool point is about externalizing your mind. I think I see a lot of people storing everything that they need to do in their heads. They're trying to figure out everything I need to do. They're just storing everything there. And one of the best pieces of advice that I think is of fundamental importance now when we're in an information overload and we're being stretched in so many directions is to have a piece of software that acts as your mind to store the things you need to do, so that you don't have to attempt to remember everything, because it's easy to be overwhelmed when there's a ton of stuff going on, especially nowadays when we're very much attempting to multitask on social media, on WhatsApp, getting Slack messages, Zoom, all these different elements. Being able to have something outside of yourself so that you can actually focus on what you're doing is one of the biggest gifts to avoid that overwhelm.
That is really great advice. Can you tell us too because you have the school, the coaching school, but there's so much more that you're doing. What is it that you're doing out in the world? Because one of the things I want you to also talk about is I was trolling your Instagram page. You guys need to go there. Like, you need to go there. I always talk about creating that beautiful blueprint for your mind to send it where it needs to go and feed it what you want that blueprint to look like. This is where you want to go eat. go to Ben's Instagram page. But you talked about the secret, and I want you to share with us a little bit about the secret that I hate to put you on the spot, but do you know what post I'm talking about?
I can honestly say I've got no idea.
Well, okay, I'm going to make sure it doesn't start talking. Hang on. So this one is titled "The Secret No One Told You About Business Success," and I loved it. It was you guys got to go see it.
I remember that one very well. So ultimately, what I was sharing there was about when we look into business and we look about starting up and moving towards where we want to be. And I think this is really fundamental now, where quite a lot of people are reinventing themselves. One of the key questions people ask themselves a lot is, who am I, right? Who are you? We get asked that question a lot. And I want to pose perhaps a different way to think about that, which is, who must you become? Because when we think about who must you become in order to live the life that you desire, suddenly we think of different traits that perhaps we're behaving at present. And when I first started on this journey, I wanted to be able to inspire people. I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be out in China, inspiring thousands and thousands of people. And I thought, well, there's a very big difference to a person that could do that compared to where I am now. However, we have to bear in mind that we're human beings, not human doings. And very often we feel that we have to do a certain thing in order to be a certain way. I have to make 1 million and then I will be inspiring, then I'll be a leader. I need to work with 15 clients, then I'll be confident, X, Y, Z. And I feel that one of the best things to do is actually embody who you must become now from a being standpoint, being that authentic leader, being inspirational, being confident, being that person that steps out of their comfort zone. And by doing that and embodying that identity now, it helps exponentially move you towards success in whichever field you are aiming for.
That's your blueprint for your mind. Like, seriously, it doesn't know you can't do it. So you just got to keep showing them that this is where we're going.
Yeah, most certainly. It's a fascinating concept that when I realized and I started to implement, I found that my entire life shifted, and I play it around with a lot of areas of my life, whether I'm being an ultimate Spartan warrior in my health, or I'm thinking about my relationships, being a lifelong lover. And I think you've got to be playful about it, as well as in business, but also in life.
100%. I agree with you. What are some of the other things that you do?
Sure. So some of the other things is obviously working with coaches and figuring out how do they, get the skills to be a coach and do speaking. And previously I was helping a lot of coaches do speaking. So inspiring an audience and then building an online practice from that. Obviously I've pivoted and I've taught them to pivot as well about doing Zoom calls or being on podcasts or all these different things and inspiring people in a different way. And what I find fascinating, this is one of the big things that I really enjoy speaking about is about niching. And I feel very, very often, I remember when I first started, someone said, Ben, you need a niche, you need to write a book, you need to build that foundation, build that audience, and then everything will be great. And one of the things that I often tell people is that, let's say you've never played football before. Do you know what position you'd like to play for the rest of your life? Yeah, probably not. So often I tell people to go out there, get some experience, take on some mentees. It's one of the best pieces of advice that I give. And I find that the coaches that train with me have amazing results because they're working with someone directly. It's free, but they're actually engaging and starting to understand the role they like to play. And then ultimately niching in due course, and that's something they can move into, but I think it's something to transition into and know that you evolve within that. I think that's incredibly important. And I guess one of the other things, just while I'm on that topic, is about the hybrid coaching model. I see a lot of people nowadays doing it, and I think it's one of the ways that I pivoted my business a few years ago, and I think it's great about having a incredibly high value program to go along the coaching that you do, because it enables you to serve your client at a higher level. You can charge higher ticket for it, and it enables you to get outstanding results without spending as much one-on-one time. And I think that's a really cool way to start to build your coaching practice so it's more sustainable and you can do it full time.
Well, one of the things we're definitely going to put in the show notes is information for his program that he has, because it's incredible. I'm always saying, go out there and get coaching credentials and get out there and start doing it, in a way that serves better and doesn't cause harm. But here's the thing. When you first came on and told your story, you did such a beautiful job. When I'm out in public doing public speaking, it's so much different than when you guys are sitting here on a podcast. I'm telling you, you're not feeding off the audience. You're not seeing people lean in, right?
Yeah.
And it's very hard. I'm telling you, it's so hard. So for those of you who are at home on, I don't know what you'd call it, timeout, and not on the stage, I got to tell you, Tony, I think Tony Robbins did it really well, because he had all these screens up where he was pointing at people and talking to them. And so it's still trying to feed off their energy, but it's a different planet on podcast and when you're doing big Zoom calls, because it's so hard to engage, and you did it so beautifully. So I might be going to your school.
I've got to be honest, when I think of the most challenging speeches in my life, and when I share the story and I dive into it, I think that I use something to compare it with, to think about, is it really that challenging to do? So the hardest speech I've ever given was the eulogy for my dad at the funeral. That was the hardest thing. And I think of speaking on stage there, and I think it's easy, like HSBC, hundreds of people, piece of cake. But probably just like honestly on par with that was doing my Chinese TEDx talk. Like doing a TED talk in Chinese was I can't even express how challenging it is in a foreign language to attempt to express emotions and linking it with body language. And when I was first doing it, I was completely off whack. I'd say 5, and then 5 seconds later, I put my hand up for 5, and it was just, honestly, it was so bad. And it was fascinating to start to attempt to do that. But I couldn't agree with you more. I've been on Zoom podcasts recently and even workshops where I'll be telling a story and then suddenly everything freezes. And I'm thinking, do I carry on? What do you do here? I'm in my flow, and it's certainly incredibly challenging.
It is, but you did it beautifully, so you've got it nailed. I bet you could go back and do that TED Talk and it'd be a piece of cake.
I definitely couldn't do it in Mandarin right now, I can tell you that, but I could give it a go in English.
Well, I think that you're amazing. If you had a message for the world, what do you want that message to be? Because we all want to leave some sort of legacy, right? Some people, their children are their legacy. Some people, they're authors or painters. What is your legacy to the world?
I think ultimately for me, as I've gone through this process of development, and I think you obviously speak to a variety of different people, I really think that legacy evolves through time. And I think ultimately for me right now, it's about helping people design their life in a way which is extraordinary. I have people speak to me and they ask me how I can do what I do. And it's not like I fell into it. It's because I actively designed my life in a way that would set me up for that. And I think that very often because of the way we've been educated and often the environment around us, we don't really spend that time to think about what would an extraordinary life and an extraordinary lifestyle look for me? Like, what would a perfect week look like for myself? Because people speak about financial freedom and, okay, cool, you've got financial freedom. Like, then what? Right? That's when you think about the purpose and the meaning and actually doing things that you really enjoy. And I find that if people can spend their time and think about designing the life that they really truly desire, suddenly I feel like it's a completely game-changing concept that can enable people to really start to enjoy their life whilst they're here.
That is a beautiful legacy to leave. Well, I want people to know how to connect with you. And by the way, if you haven't already started typing in, going to his Instagram, I would definitely do that, because I noticed there's a free offer on there. And anytime you can get free education from someone like Ben, go grab it. So where can they find you?
Sure. So they can get me on ben-ivey.com, Ivey. I'm not a plant. I used that on a recent podcast. I really enjoyed that, so I'm going to say that again. And for free downloads, it's ben-ivey.com/overwhelm. I've got 5 hacks to download /procrastination. There's some reasons why you're procrastinating, how to overcome them. And then I've got business models for coaches. There's loads of stuff on there if they have a browse of the website.
You know what? That just made me think of something too, because we still have a few minutes, but I would love you to tell us some tips on procrastination, because I'm the biggest procrastinator. But here's the thing. I do get it all done, but I'm rushed because I procrastinated in doing it. But it gets done. It's just stressful because I'm rushed getting it done.
Cool. Okay. Well, the first thing is I wrote a master guide to procrastination, which maybe we'll put in the show notes. I think people will really enjoy reading that. And one of the things that I talk about there is the different type of procrastinators. And I think that it's fascinating to dive into, and we'll see if we can maybe quickly understand which one you are. As a business owner, I'm curious, would you say you're more of an artist, like you love what you do and you move into it? Are you more of a systems manager, like you love the systems, the automations? Or are you a business creator? You just like creating stuff. You love the thrill of business and you like moving forward. I'm curious.
I'm an artist.
Artist. Okay, great. So generally speaking, the artist has 2 main types of procrastination that they do. Either it's the avoider, where they just avoid things. Like they know they should do it, but they just avoid it because it's not really them. They don't really love to do it and they tend to avoid it. Or they do something called the dreamer. So the dreamer is where they focus on what they do and they sometimes feel like, do I have to do that? They often feel like, yeah, I'm really good at what I do. Like, do I have to go and do that? And often these are the types of procrastinations that they have. I'm curious, do one of those resonate with you?
I just pay someone to do the stuff I don't like.
Amazing. That is an artist who has found her way to be a business owner incredibly well. That's obviously why Jana is incredibly successful. I'm very curious then, how do you, what would you say your typical procrastination is?
So for instance, if someone asks me to do something and I hear like, hey, do you want to plan a baby shower? Party? Yes, I do. I'll help plan. And then all of a sudden all the work comes. Okay, well, you're going to have to book the caterers, do that. And I'm like, I just want to go to a party. And I want it to be really pretty. And so I have to get someone to start doing all of that, right?
Got it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I would guess that's on the avoider. And what I mean by that is that you love to do some things, but you just avoid the hell out of things. And the way that you do it is you just have a fantastic way to deal with it, which is outsourcing it and giving it to other people, which is amazing. One of the tips that I give to avoiders that perhaps aren't in a position where they can outsource everything is often it's scheduling and giving a focus time to actually do that one thing, because it enables you to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this, and you have that time. When we look into Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, if an avoider can nail it to begin with, I find that then the rest of their day is very easy.
That is perfect advice. I love it, but I rarely nail it right away, which is why it always ends up to be so well, because we got all those mistakes out for you.
Well, I've no doubt that, you mentioned you're procrastinating, but I'm sure you're productive than most people listening to this with so many different podcasts going on and the change that you all are also creating in the world.
Ben, someone told me once about procrastinating is you can't be a master of all things. So make a list of the 5 top things you have to get done. Only work on the first one till it's done and work your way down the list. I'm like, I will never get anything done. I have to have more than, like, I have like 20 or 30 or 40 things to do. But I did it one time, right? Once I started doing it and I'm like, I'm free. What am I going to do with the rest of my day? It worked so well without me juggling multiple tasks. Just, okay,
Yeah.
crossed off. And then I was done and I could do whatever fun thing, or if I wanted to dive into something else in work, I could. And it worked really well for me.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Like being able to have that list or to focus on, like for me personally, I love writing down all the tasks at the time frame that I'm going to do it throughout the day, because I find that I've got to focus, I know what to do, and I can just nail it. For me, that's one of the best ways to, even for myself, to avoid procrastinating, because no one's perfect. I think we all procrastinate to some level, but it's about how do you deal with it in a way that's sustainable and you don't let it control you and move you off course.
I love it. I hope you do send me that link, because I would love to put it in the show notes so people can get some of that great information from you.
Sure, of course.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I know it's late there.
That's okay. I've been slowly pushing my bedtime a little later to do the podcast, but I'm fine.
Well, tell your girlfriend thank you for letting us have you for the show, but I really appreciate your time and your message to the world. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on.